All right, everyone. So hopefully you were able to answer those questions and respond to your classmates. Um, I don't have much more to add. I just want to conclude this lecture, but also address our field of history of how the Renaissance transforms what we do as historians. Many of the historians during the Renaissance actually look back to people like Thucydides from the Greek era who as we stated earlier, moves away from this kind of supernatural and provide real kind of critical analysis of historical events. And this is something that's taken up by historians in the Renaissance, where they're advocating this notion of education, right? The more education you have, the better analysis you're going to be able to provide, more answers. So education becomes critical in doing not only history, but almost every field during this period. And the liberal studies really begins to kind of flourish during this period because like ancient Rome, they focus on the ability to analyze, the ability to be rhetorical, have had these skills that to some extent had disappeared in the in-between age. One thing historians begin to focus on in the Renaissance is this notion for truth. As we said earlier, that the Middle Ages, not that they were lying, but if you can remember Thomas Aquinas' existence of God, the default answer was God, and these guys were kind of moving away from that and saying, no, there must be further truth out there, and it's just a matter of finding it. So this kind of pushes history into a new direction where they begin to look at the previous age. Remember that they're looking at it from the period of the Renaissance. So the previous age they define as barbaric, and this age as an age of enlightenment. Also, they've used archives, which is something we still do as historians. We look at archives, we look at historical material, and we analyze it and we come up with conclusions. So searching the archives becomes very important to our jobs. And then lastly, as stated earlier, they do critical analysis. It's not just a guessing game. It's seeing patterns in history, looking at material and analyzing it, and not just go with some default answer. It's just being critical as to why things were said or why things were written down in a particular perspective. So definitely critical analysis is something that we do as historians, but that you all do as college students. So this becomes very important in our field. And ultimately, if you do all these things, it should lead you to a truth. So I put it in quotes because philosophy has taken it into a whole different direction as kind of questioning whether absolute truth exists. But nevertheless, in the Renaissance, they believe that truth can be sought by doing all these different things. So conclusions, what do we learn? What do all these things have in common that we talked about from the readings to the beginning of the lecture, is that there's a shift to the secular world. Unlike the Middle Ages where the supernatural and again God plays such an important role in people's lives, that does not become the definitive answer for many people during the Renaissance, though God is still in existence, right? People still are very religious. Reason becomes a tool that people use to understand why things happen. So from Machiavelli's piece, he really looks at how humans are just looking out for their own self-interest. So reason becomes very important. Erasmus's Prince seems, probable, but more illogical in this kind of world where people are really looking after themselves, as Machiavelli kind of noted. People look at the ancient world. Again, they become the model for this period, looking at both Greece and Rome. They make sure that they utilize analysis, that they're not just coming up with opinions, but they analyze the material. And, they focus on education. Education is a tool to give you the ability to be critical of different questions in life. So education started off in the Middle Ages, but really begins to kind of filter down to different places. And one of the places that we'll see is with the Reformation. All right, so we'll stop it there, I think. And this concludes this particular section of our lecture on the Renaissance. There are a few other activities such as the art, so don't forget to complete those.